Today I install rock lights to go from this to this. Now, isn't that so much better? Well, good morning. Today I'm working on my lighting setup on my truck, the 95 Suburban. I am adding to the lights that I already have, which aren't much, but I'm adding some rock lights today, which is kind of exciting. I showed you guys these rock lights a little while ago. I put a video out where I unboxed them and just kind of took a closer look at them. They're by a company called Diode Dynamics, and I think they are made really, really well. They're very powerful rock lights, and I only have 4 of them. So I'm kind of been trying to figure out where to put those. So oddly enough, it is kind of difficult trying to figure out the best placement for the lights. Now, of course, you might think like I did, well, why not just place them all in the wheel wells up here above the tires? But to me, that just doesn't make very much sense, especially being that this isn't an actual rock crawling vehicle. This is just an overlander, off-road, you know, just getting out there. So I don't think that the wheel wells are going to be the best use of these 4 lights. So I just took a step back and was looking at the truck, and although there are a lot of possibilities with the design of these rock lights, you can pretty much put them almost anywhere. I do feel like for this round of rock lights, I think I want them to light up the ground all right here. So that way, if I'm off-road, it's night, there are literally no lights anywhere, I can flip a switch and light up the ground all around my truck, and hopefully that'll help me to be able to see, you know, kind of just what's around me as I drive along. Now take a look at the state of my truck. I have the whole dash, all these panels pulled apart because I've kind of been reworking things a little bit. For a while now, I've had this button right here, and that controlled my front 2 fog lights. However, I'm having to change that to make this switch the switch for the rock lights, because as you can see, these wires right here, these are the new wires for the rock lights, and they do come in this pre-made wire loom, which when looking under the dash, you can see it goes right through the firewall there. And these other wires you see here, the red and the blacks, these went to my front 2 fog lights, which I'm now having to reroute, which are now gonna go right here with the original switch. But this is gonna be located right about there where this panel is. So overall, not the very best setup with the switches. I would like to have a little switch pod or something like that, but for right now, I think this will do just fine. All right, to give you an idea of one of the locations for the rock lights, let's look under the truck. And if you look at this frame rail here, you can see I've mounted the rock light at about a 45-degree angle, and there are plenty of mounting holes that are just natural holes in the frame rail from the factory. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to not drill any new holes and only use holes that are the same on both sides in the same exact location. Also, if you look closely, you can see that bracket there that I'm using, which was a 90-degree bracket, which I bent to about a 45-degree angle. Now, the reason why I did that is because I didn't necessarily want it pointing straight down at the ground. So for now, I think this is gonna be my setup. I can always change it later. So the rock lights in question are these guys right here. They are the Stage Series Rock Light by Diode Dynamics. And this is the 4-pack, and these are what these rock lights look like. They are so slim and so small. They have a mounting point right there in the center. They also have provisions for like a zip tie mount. But to me, these are just the perfect multi-purpose lights. I opted for the frosted clear white lens. This actually, if you can tell, has optics built in. So this is an actual lens that is made to project light in a certain direction. It is thick. It is really, really nice. You can also get different colors of these like red, blue, green, and amber. But overall, if you take a look at this included wire loom, I mean, this is top notch. I'm tying some wires together, 2 thinner wires into 1 thicker wire. I already have flux on the connection here. I'm touching the soldering iron to the wire from below. That's to heat up the wire, and we're just about there. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. That heat in the wire is what is pulling that solder inside the connections there. Now, after the connection is soldered, I've got to protect this, and I do that with a piece of heat shrink tubing. I'll go ahead and heat this up, applying heat from different directions, which will close down that heat shrink and protect that wire. I like to slide an even bigger and longer section of heat shrink and do the same thing, further protecting that connection point. All right, I've been in here for about an hour, routing wire up underneath the dash, also creating the end links to put onto the switch, mounting the switch and all that stuff. Basically, this switch for the fog lights has been relocated. It's done. I've already temporarily hooked it up, made sure everything was working. And it is. So right now you can see I have these alligator clips hooked up to a switch. Now I'm using just an old switch that I had laying around because, well, I broke the other one. I'll talk about that later. But for now, I just wanted to show you that I have this switch hooked up. If you look under the truck, I'm gonna flip it on high. There's high, okay. Off, and then low. All right, so granted, I do have other studio lights on here, but that's on low, and I think that is going to be awesome because already that looks really, really bright. And you can see the light there. The diffuser is not on, by the way. That's just straight LEDs. Okay, so after figuring out the front two lights, which I now have installed and working, I just need to basically secure the wire and then finalize kind of under the hood what I'm doing, where I'm gonna pull power, if I'm gonna go straight to the battery or back to the fuse block. After all that, the next task was, of course, trying to figure out where I was gonna mount the rear two lights. Now, I'm really limited, and let me show you why. Well, let's look up at the frame rail here, and you can see that I have these semi-rigid emergency brake lines that are basically in the way of every one of the holes, not to mention all the holes on the passenger side that are open seem to be taken up on this side, the ones that I would want to use anyway. So I came up with what I think might be a good solution. I went ahead and mounted it to this body mount. There was a perfect hole right there, easy access, and that body mount is really in the center of this truck, right where the two doors meet. So I bent the bracket up at a 45-degree angle, and then I twisted it up some so that the light kind of comes out and this way, kind of spreading light in this whole area just underneath this rear driver door, and obviously in front of the rear tire. Okay, here's my frame rail, and you can see this is the connection point to the light, which is just on the other side of the frame rail there. And I've already routed the power supply line that connects to it, and there is plenty of wire they give you. And these lines are pretty ingenious. They literally just plug into each other. There's a little keyway. Get in there. There we go. And that's it. That's the connection. You just push them together. So back on the other side of the frame rail, you can see that light there and how I've angled it. And you can also see the other light that is mounted right there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a test run. Let's flip on those lights. And oh my gosh, look at how awesome that looks. Yeah, I think that rear placement's going to be pretty good. Well, as much as I'd like to say that the location of the lights are perfect, and they are pretty good, I think we have a little bit of a problem. Take a look at this. When I dip down just a little bit, you can see that front light there is fully in view on that frame rail. Unfortunately for me, that's just not gonna work. I'm gonna have to move that light. I don't know, something about that just looks tacky when you can see that light hanging down. I do, however, like the location of the rear light. Looking at the truck coming down, there you can see the front light is in full view, and yes, you can see that frame rail lit up by the rear light, but it is tucked up in there nicely. So you can see this body mount here on the frame rail, and that's where I mounted the rear light. It's rear facing, firing back on the ground and towards that rear tire. And the thing that's super cool here is that little hole right there is the same location that I used to mount that rear facing light. So I think that's my answer. I'm gonna take the front light off and mount them to these mounting holes right here. I have relocated that light. Definitely a lot better in terms of being able to see it from under the vehicle. Can't see it at all. It's tucked up nicely. All right, guys, this thing is finally done. Let's go ahead and just kick on the rock lights on low. There are the rock lights on low, and I know it might seem a little underwhelming and almost pointless to some, but I think this is absolutely amazing. I mean, just look what the truck looks like with no lights on. It just looks like a normal truck. You know, dark, a little bit scary perhaps, but then you go and kick these rock lights on high, and that's what you got. You have an incredible underlight for the whole truck. And I love the way I installed these to where they're forward firing and rear firing from the center, and they are spreading the light a lot more evenly across the ground rather than having one really harsh hot spot. This is kind of throwing the light a farther distance and giving me a more diffused light on the ground, which is what I want. I want this to be purposeful. That was the whole point. I'm gonna get out of the truck here and I want you to see just how awesome it is. Look at that ground. Look at how lit this is. Can you imagine being off-road somewhere, not knowing what you're opening your door into and stepping into when it's pitch black outside? I mean, look at this, guys. That is incredible. This is exactly what I was hoping for, a purposeful light. This isn't to be flashy or showy. This is for purposeful light. Another thing I really like about this so far is that looking out my window as I'm driving, you can see how much of that ground is lit up, allowing me to see what's next to me, what's beside me, a big branch coming up, or something like that. Now, if I were to turn it off, look at the difference. There's nothing there. That's my front fog lights and my headlights. And let's turn it back on. Look at that. Purposeful light. So nice to have that extra light. Don't want to hit a big log like that. Okay, so even right now, just coming back here to open this door, it's just so nice having so much light out here. Well, I am pleasantly surprised at how much I like these lights. I really didn't know how much I was going to like them. I didn't know how useful they were going to be. I bought the lights because when I saw them on Diode Dynamics website, just the little pucks themselves, the little lights themselves looked incredibly cool. And I knew I would use them for something, whether they were auxiliary lights somewhere or even rock lights. But I decided, you know what, we're gonna install them as rock lights, being that that's what they are. We're gonna try them out. I figured out this positioning where I can forward and rear fire them to spread the light evenly over the ground, and I think it's doing a fantastic job. This is really purposeful light. This is so that I can see when I'm off-road, so I can see my surroundings, and when I open my door, what I'm stepping into. This is so I can have some extra light around my truck, getting in and out, driving through a very narrow, path or something like that. So I think for that, it's awesome. I may even add more. All right, guys, Jimmy for One Road. Man, this is so cool. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.